You are the leading try scorer in the history of Sevens rugby. My man, how did you do that? Was that luck? Was it chance? Or were you just unbelievable?
By kind of a few years in, I realised actually I could be chasing something quite cool here. It then became more of a conscious habit of actually, how can I be better? It's finding your strength and your niche and how you play the game. It's understanding the players around you who are doing a similar role, what they're doing better than you. Rugby's given me a lot of soft skills, which I now use day to day when I'm in the office or when I'm kind of using different goal settings and these kind of different elements. Sevens is obviously pretty brutal for that. We'd play 6 games over a weekend. If you imagine trying to run your fastest 1K and then you then try and do a task for 60 seconds or try and think and try and do a problem solving, it's very hard. You've got your heart rate's at 180. When I look back at my career, the mental part was probably the bit which I didn't get right. You're super critical as athletes, wanted to always do better, and you're not always happy with the outcome of things or your actions, and we could really build this cohesion throughout as well. So yeah, they were probably the golden years, and then COVID hit and ruined everything.
And welcome to another episode on the Lessons from the Game podcast. Today we are joined by one of the most electric rugby players we have ever seen, Dan Norton, the all-time leading try scorer in World Sevens history and a 2-time Olympian. We dive into his journey from blistering pace on the pitch to life after rugby, the challenges of 2020, the rivalries that shaped him, and what it really takes to stay consistent at the top. This is one packed with lessons for players, coaches, and anyone chasing high performance. All right, guys, how's it going? Dan, good to have you here. Welcome.
Hi, guys. Thank you for having me. Very nice intro there. Nice. I'm happy with that.
Man, I'm getting really good at it, really good at the prompts for ChatGPT. So thanks for that. It really means the world to me, man.
No worries.
Ben, how you doing, brother?
Yeah, I'm good, G. What about you, mate? How's Toulouse?
Oh man, it's great, man. It's good. It's good, nice and cool. Luckily in Toulouse, everything's not too far apart. I had yesterday a bit of an issue with my electric bike. I got a puncture and I realized I didn't know how to fix a puncture. And then I had to walk 2 kilometers to the local bike store. And they pumped it up for me. At the end of the day, there wasn't a puncture. I just took the valve out by accident. But that's a long story. Dan, brother, listen here. Great to have you. I just want to say well done on everything you achieved in your career, man. You know, sometimes I channeled my inner Dan back in the day when I was still playing, you know, and I always managed to do that when I wore white boots. I don't know why when props wear white boots, they just go faster. That's just unbelievable what you achieved, and we're looking forward to the spot. So we're going to get stuck into it. We always start off the podcast and we ask our guests this one question. What is the one lesson from the game that you have learned that you can share with our young rugby players and aspiring coaches?
Yeah, it's this is obviously, I've been speaking to Ben about this for the last few weeks about coming on the podcast. So again, really excited by being here and sharing some of my memory and some of my journey. I think that's a question which I've spent a lot of time reflecting on. I think I'm probably going to cop out and say it's quite hard to find probably one lesson or a few lessons which kind of really I take away and I still use day to day. I think the main part of it is that rugby's given me a lot of soft skills, which I now use day to day when I'm in the office or when I'm kind of using different goal settings and these kind of different elements kind of day to day. I think the big part of, when again, playing sevens for 14 years for England Rugby, Team GB, etc. I think it's the people. So that's the psychology part of myself. So understanding my own performances, understanding how I interact with the team, but then also understanding the team I'm in as well. So there's so many different characters when you're playing 15, when you're playing sevens in rugby in general. For me, it was about the big part, which I take away now and I use it kind of day to day, is how I interact with other people. I don't get it right all the time. I think as human beings, we try and evolve and keep evolving. And I think the understanding the people I'm dealing with day to day in the office in a very different culture in Dubai, compared to some of my teammates I had when I was playing, and then even family and friends. These are very different interactions, and I think you spend a lot more time now once I've stopped playing, reflecting on these kind of interactions and these moments as well. So I think, yes, there's the soft skills you get from playing rugby around the habits, the drive, the goal setting, the continued kind of development. But I think the people part was probably the big part of the sevens, which I kind of take with me now as well. So that's kind of a nice little skill to think about when I'm sat in a boring office staring at a screen.
Today's Lessons from the Game episode was possible thanks to the support of Harris Begley Financial Planning, headed up by former Blackheath player Matt Begley. They are the experts to speak to for tailored advice on investments, mortgages, insurance, and pensions, helping you plan for a future of financial security. So when you think money, think Harris Begley and head to www.harrisbegley.co.uk. Approver Quilter Financial Services Limited and Quilter Mortgage Planning Limited, March 2025. I'm going to get stuck into it because this is the one thing I think our listeners want to know and have a better understanding of it. We tried to run this prompt through ChatGPT, but we couldn't get a very precise answer. And then I passed it on to Ben GPT. So he's like our other AI version in the rugby circle, but has all the answers. You are the leading try scorer in the history of sevens rugby. I don't think anyone has overtaken you. Correct me if I'm wrong. My man, how did you do that? Was that luck? Was it chance? Or were you just unbelievable?
Yeah, I think the sevens as a whole is obviously, it changed drastically for the 14 years I was playing. Like, first started playing with Ben Gollins and kind of Asaya Damadamu and kind of the guys who were kind of from a different, playing for a year before me. So when I first started playing, I was playing with Ben Gollins and he was obviously top point scorer at the time. He was up there for tries as well. I just was in the squad as a squad player at 20 years old, never thinking I'd be in that position. Again, spent a lot of time doing sevens solely rather than 15s. So I'm very fortunate that I kind of spent a lot of time doing that. By kind of a few years in, I realized actually I could be chasing something quite cool here. I'm really enjoying where sevens is going kind of around 2010, 2012, 2014. And yeah, it then became more of a conscious habit of actually, how can I be better each game? How can I be better for each tournament? How can we be better as a team as well? So as much as I evolved to try and reach those targets, it was more about how can we be better as a team as well. So the team bit was probably the bit the boys tell me that I need to be better at, and they were the ones passing me the ball, so I needed to work with them quite well. But no, I think it was more I realized probably halfway through my career actually that I could do something really cool here, and it's quite a nice accolade to have once you retire as well. So yeah, but there are people who are still chasing me down, taking down the target. You obviously have Marcus Manetta playing for Argentina, who's a young buck up there doing some really cool things, and you have a number of the women playing as well. So Maddie Levi is literally tearing up trees across as well. So yeah, I would love to obviously sit here in 10 years time and still be at the top of the tree. It comes with a lot of boasting rights when I'm putting the kids to bed. They're probably the only people who listen to me talk about my tries anymore. But no, but I think for the sport itself, it's nice that there are these accolades and these opportunities as well.
Dan, that's awesome. Obviously, I don't know if you know it, I'm no longer a full-time coach. I've changed roles now. I've become a well-renowned research scientist to help rugby forwards level up their game. And they have asked me to do some dissecting of the brains of former rugby players to understand how we can take the skills of all the great ones and how I can transfer it to the new generation of rugby forwards who want to dominate and become the ultimate athlete in the game. So you scored all those tries. What tips can you give to rugby forwards in terms of identifying, being in the right situation at the right time, in the right place to experience that moment of glory crossing the try line?
I probably don't have much feedback for forwards. I think for them, a 3 meter try will feel like a 8 meter try. So I think the modern day prop is evolving, but I don't think it's evolving at that rate. As you probably know, you guys are there to push quite hard, aren't you? So we don't want to give you too many other skills because then there's no need for any more backs, is there? So, but no, I think the main part is it for the tries are obviously important. Nobody wants to see too many scrums. You probably want to see more scrums and mauls. But for me and probably a bit of Ben as well, we want to see more flow and rugby. But again, the game is there to be players are becoming more athletic, people are getting faster. You've got people like Mako back in the day playing for England. You got a number of other big, massive props who are able to catch pass and move really well and get through the line and score 30, 40-meter tries. So, the game is definitely evolving, and hopefully there aren't too many props scoring 300 tries. So let's see.
No, but on a more serious note, as a rugby player in general, we want to see a more attacking style of rugby in general, and we're seeing also the level of sevens has gone up massively, the intensity, the pace. So I think it's that ability of yours, because I do believe, and we see this with Will Jordan playing for the All Blacks, it's not by chance that you're in the right place at the right time. So I think the question where I'm going into is that, do you scan it? Do you read the game? Do you have a gut feeling? Do you work early knowing that this is how the game is going to flow? And I think that's what we want to share with the younger audience, because with Ben and myself, we've had various chats on this podcast where we've realized players are not taking information in. So if you can maybe just give some key insights over there.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. Again, my oldest son started playing rugby now. There's a lot more involvement from parents and families around instructing people how to play the game. So there's probably less thinking involved, in the sense of you can go online and you can find a program, you can do a lot of more. There's probably more information available than there was when I was playing, or when you guys are playing as well. And that kind of potentially becomes an overkill of actually everything available, because there's so much information available. How do you then make the right decision? I think for me, when I was younger, I think if you take it all the way back and you can kind of compare people coming late into rugby, there's a lot of the basic skills you learn when you're 9, 10, 11, 12, but how to fall properly, how to be in the right place for the tackle, how to kind of understand playing against bigger kids, against smaller kids, etc. And these are probably the skills you pick up when you were a lot younger, just running around carefree. So they're a big part of any sporting background. So it doesn't have to be rugby as a whole, but how do you change direction? How do you fall? Again, kids climbing trees, falling out of trees, bouncing around. These are the innate skills you learn of actually coordination and balance. And then I think that's probably one part. And again, from there, it becomes natural selection when you're 18, 19, 20. Do you have those natural skills of actually, can you move? Can you change direction? Can you be in the right place? The next part is probably more the technical part of rugby. So for me, it was reviewing my performances. It was watching the best other players and understanding what they're doing, what I'm not doing. So that review process. So again, it's very different for every player. Not everybody's going to be Will Jordan. Not everybody's going to be Bowden Barrett. There's a lot of different variables in how people play the game. So it's finding your strength and your niche and how you play the game. It's understanding the players around you who are doing a similar role, what they're doing better than you, how can you improve yourself. And then it's a noisy statement, but it's just being a student of the game. If you're saying that you want to do really well at sports, you need to spend time doing that. And that's why we were lucky playing sevens. We trained full time. We had opportunities to review footage. We spent a lot of time reflecting and reviewing as well. So you then start understanding over time how you could be doing things better. And that's also performance in sport in a nutshell. That's the people who are able to perform at the highest level are able to keep evolving every time they play. So you don't see them making the same 3 or 4 mistakes kind of every game. They start evolving and realizing, I've been here before, I've done this situation before, it didn't work because of this, this and this. And they can find those really concise actions a lot quicker. There's less time thinking about it. And then you then fall back into the flow state. So yeah, I think there's the element of actually younger kids spending more time running around and falling and playing. You get that natural ability there. And then when you are in these performance environments, not always more is more. It's about doing the right reflected work to then understand how you can then bulletproof your performance.
Dan, there's so much to discuss in terms of what you've just talked about just now, but also just generally in terms of the nature versus nurture thing. So I'd love to know more about your upbringing and sort of what it looked like in terms of, was it just running around playing games with mates, and then that caused you to develop a range of skills that you could then use? Because when you played, it always looked very easy for you. It looked like effortless, but I think perhaps later on you developed that work ethic to make it look effortless, perhaps. But early on, and those formative years, what were the keys, do you think, for you to develop all those athletic abilities and put yourself in that position?
Yeah, I think when I was younger, I was just playing sports. So I'd play rugby. I'd play probably every sport at school. So every term you're playing as much sport as possible because I enjoy doing it, less because I realized the knock-on effect. And then when rugby started becoming a lot more serious, I went to Hartbury College, decided that I wanted to go to Hartbury to do more sport-based learning rather than sitting in the classroom. So from there, I spent a lot more time just playing rugby, and a lot of more of it was around touch, evasion, kind of beating people around you, competing kind of 16, 18 years old. So those kind of habits of actually just running with the ball and of developing your skills was a big part of that. You'd get heckled by a lot of the guys if your kicking was bad, or if you dropped a lot of balls, or you got a lot more kind of kudos from your players when your skills improved. And we'd also spend a lot of time doing those skills in the background as well. So these kind of they probably put more confidence. And then into sevens, it was two very different ways of coaches with Ben Ryan and Simon Amor. Ben's philosophy was more around playing and kind of the Barcelona of back in the day of football, of actually touches, movements, and just being on the ball and how you could dictate and move around. Simon had a bit more of a technical model around how he wanted teams to play and how he saw the roles of players as well. So I think that journey kind of complemented my development. It gave me the skills to play. Then it gave a bit more of an understanding of actually how I can then actually fit within a framework and a system as well. So yeah, I think that shaped me, but I think it's very different for other people. It is about play. It's about exploring your skills and expanding on that and working hard to actually have the best skills. Then it's seeing if it fits within that framework of a team environment as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's what G and I we've talked about. So you talked about the multi skills. We've talked about that on podcasts before, about sort of not specializing too early. But also one of the things we talk about is that talent gets you in the room, and then what you do after that determines whether you stay in the room. And obviously, you had this 14-year career, very, very consistent, one of the most consistent ever. Do you always have the work ethic, or was that something that you then realized you saw behavior being modeled when you got in the environment and you thought, wow, I like this. If I want to stay here, I need to work harder and be more disciplined. And was that just a natural sort of progression for you?
I think it was when I first joined Sevens in 2009, like Ben was very big on that. Fitness was a big component of the game. And a lot of guys were coming, obviously we're going from playing 15 and coming into sevens for a few weeks and going back to 15s. For him, he was saying that there needed to be a higher onus, a bigger onus of actually fitness being a fundamental skill to then play the game at the level he wanted us to be played at. So that then became a part of the environment. It was work really hard, get this fitness base, improving those elements and improving the game itself. And then you also have the model players as well who were then pushing those limits, push those opportunities. So for me, I just kind of got dragged along with it, and it then became kind of part and parcel of playing sevens. And again, for people who have played sevens, and for a lot of us, it's hard work a lot of the time. There's not a lot of escape anywhere. So wherever you're on the pitch, there's not a lot of resting places. So you have to be at the best. You have to be your best position, your best fitness levels and form to compete. And there's different elements. You'd come into pre-season not being in the same level from a fitness perspective where you'd want to, and you could definitely feel the levels of actually, I'm not able to perform my best here because I'm not in the right fitness capacity. And that was kind of where you kind of wanted to be at the best to then be able to have bragging rights over some of the boys, to show up some of the boys who weren't performing at their best. That was always quite nice from a competitive perspective. But then you also wanted to try and beat the best teams in the world, and you needed to be fit, you need to be fast, you need to be agile and strong. So it is all these cross components which then brought together the elite sevens players.
Yeah, and I guess did that, and what about the self-analysis and everything like that? Was that like a learned behavior from the environment, and you like learn actually, if I want to stay in this environment, this is what I need to do? Because up until that point, did you just think it was all just human physical performance and it was pretty natural for you up until that point, and did you learn those skills as you went along?
Yeah, it definitely felt more like play. So again, we're just going out there to play rugby. There are some constraints around actually how we do things and how we do manipulate, etc. But it was more around, we're going out there to play rugby for an hour. We're running around, we're beating people. We're trying to, show our best skills. The reflective part probably came the second half of my career. There was elements within Ben's philosophies and through his kind of management, and we then had more resources. We then brought on analysis people to then obviously start using these resources. But it was probably more than the second half where I realized probably I need to spend more time here. Like, again, Sibeli Sinatla, for instance, when he first came on the scene, he was tearing things up and he was scoring 8 to 10 tries a tournament, and I'm sitting there being like, I've scored 3 or 4 tries. Like, what is he doing in his games? What opportunities is he getting, which I'm not? And then is it a case of, this is what the team isn't giving me, or these are the opportunities that I'm missing myself? So these are kind of some of the examples where I'd spend, actually, he's in this position and doing this, but why aren't I doing this? Am I carrying enough speed? Am I getting the ball early enough? Am I getting the ball too late? Like, these are the different variables which I then started understanding more and more. But again, that's definitely the second half. There was always the reflective coaching part from when I was at Gloucester, when I was at Bristol, when I was at the Sevens, but it was more a fabricated tool than it was a day-to-day tool that I used. So yeah, the reflective reviewing part was probably more something that I realized, actually, this is a really good skill that I should be doing more of.
Then that's brilliant in terms of that self-analysis, because it's something Ben and myself, we are constantly preaching to players. You mentioned it earlier, you need to be a student of the game. So once you have completed that self-analysis, what was your process after that? Because it's one thing to watch your game, say, okay, this is great, I need to how did you set out your plan for the week or the next few weeks? Come saying, you know what, this is the key area where I need to work on. This is what I need to do. This is who I need to help you. How did you build that process afterwards?
Yeah, so the psychology came we had a psychologist come in and spend a lot of time working with the team from a team perspective, and then that then built in kind of the individual part. So with working with her, she's an amazing psychologist. She then helped me understand this blueprint and actually the processes that I needed to actually use day to day and for a tournament and for a week. That was kind of a big part of it. But I think I would then set up the week as in I would probably spend 10, 15, 20 minutes after most sessions, so Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, out of those 4 opportunities, probably spending 10, 20 minutes going through one-on-ones from an attacking perspective, from a defense perspective, different positions. Do I have more space? Do I have less space? Tackling, again, the same thing. Do I have more space? Are they carrying speed? Am I carrying speed? What positions are they in? So I'd put myself in these positions. If I made a mistake in a tournament, can I rectify this in training? Why did it work? What do I need to do next time? And these are kind of the learnings that I would try and fabricate into the end of the session. So 10, 20 minutes kicking, so grubbers, one-on-one, these kind of parts which I would then add into the sessions as well. And again, teammates are a big part of that. I can't do everything on my own. So had a number of guys who also wanted to improve in these areas as well. So you'd find the guys, if it was kicking or if it was defense stuff, let's spend 10 minutes going through here. Can you stand here? Can you do this, this, and this? Can you try and do this? So these are kind of the different elements of it as well. So it wasn't just me, it was the team as well. These guys came in and they supported and we grew together as well.
Oh, that's impressive. It's great to see your guys' mindset and the way you guys approach it on all that scenario training. It's something which I try to apply in my coaching as well. Dan, a lot of people don't know this about me. I had a short stint in cricket. I had 1 over in cricket for my first team and 1 sevens game under 16. Then I realized the pace was way too intense and it wasn't for me. But what always impressed me about sevens players is that, obviously, you correct me if I'm wrong, it's like the tournament normally lasts for about 2 days, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct? And firstly, how many games do you guys play? And then I think the second part of the question is how do you guys deal with that pressure? Because your games are so short but so intense. I know it feels like an eternity for you guys, but for us as spectators, you're watching you guys on the lead with a minute to go, team scores a try, there's 20 seconds left, and in rugby, in 15s, if it's 20 seconds, it's very rarely when it happens, you can get the ball back, you go score a try. It's tough, it's hard, the defensive lines are intense. So how do you guys deal with that pressure? Because we've seen games where guys really pull it through in that last second and they manage to win that game. So it's always intrigued me. Like I always felt that the pressure is way more elevated, in the game sense for sevens players. And how did you guys deal with that? What was your language you had in the field? You're like, you look at that shot clock, 10 seconds left. You're in your own 22 in a sevens game, and you need to find a way to score.
Yes, sevens is obviously pretty brutal for that. We'd play 6 games over a weekend. So if you play your pool games, similar over 3 days, you play your pool games, so 3 pool games, then you then go into the knockouts, quarterfinals, semifinals, finals. So ideally, you're trying to get 6 games, you're trying to get to a final, but sometimes you lose in the quarters or a semi, then you then play the bowl and the other games. Games are 40 minutes long, 7 minutes a half, 2 minutes at half time. Not a lot of time once you're in the moment to actually try and rectify and problem solve. You've got 2 minutes at half time where the coach comes on, gives you a few pointers. But again, if you imagine trying to run your fastest 1K and then you then try and do a task for 60 seconds or try and think and try and do a problem solving, it's very hard. You've got your heart rate's at 180, you run at, a couple of K. There's a lot going on. So actually trying to understand and bring in information is very tough. Again, this is the fitter you are, the more you can deal with these training loads from a mental perspective, but also a physical perspective as well. So yeah, there's a lot going on in a game weekend, in a match, and things can change in those 20 seconds. From a training perspective, you spend a lot of time going through those different scenarios on pitches. So we'll do an exercise where we'd have a scrum, 20 meters out attacking, 20 meters out defending. It's last play or is 20 seconds left. What do we do? Where do we go? What skills, what calls do we have? So you practice these scenarios when you are away from sevens. So you kind of segment the game of sevens. You've got 5 minutes left. How do you then drive that? You've got 2 minutes left. You've got 1 minute left, and then you also, depending on the opposition you have, you try and identify their weaknesses. So which player they have, who can you target, who can you get to, what players do we have, where's the mismatches. So these are the work you do before a match, before a game, before a tournament. So you kind of have an understanding of where this may be. But once you're in those moments, it's just playing what's in front of you. And sometimes you get it right, sometimes you don't. But as you mentioned, like games of sevens, you've only got 14 minutes. So even if the clock is in the red, you're still trying to get a score because you need extra points to go through, or you're trying to stop them from scoring. So yeah, they're very intense moments. It's probably worth also saying that the pressure is immense for a weekend, and there's the undulating effect of the emotions of a tournament. And I probably spent a lot of the time, which I probably look back on now, probably being quite not scared, but like anxious of the outcome. So I'd spend the game weekend being quite a elevated state. So you're not really able to always absorb or even enjoy the moments because you're always like that kind of fight or flight kind of moment. So that would then go probably from the warm up to being stood in the tunnel, being stood next to some 6'4" Fijian, screaming and shouting, some 6'4" South Africans, And these are the elements where you kind of are put in a position where you have to be elevated to go out there to perform because you're playing against some guys who are trying to kill you kind of thing. So these are kind of the mindset you have to try and factor into it. There's also the parts where it's very physically draining. You're going through a 40-minute game, you're doing a warm-up, you're then coming back down for 2.5 hours. So there's a lot of stress involved. And yeah, it's just a very taxing opportunity. But yeah, you spend a lot of time away from the tournament trying to understand these scenarios so that when you are in the moment, it then becomes just a natural kind of decision-making process rather than being overawed by the whole environment.
Dan, I just got a follow-up question because you mentioned there, like you can have potentially 6 games on the weekend. All right. What's the max amount of games you can have?
So the minimum you're going to have really is 4 or 5, generally 5, and the max you're having is 6. So
6.
Yeah.
So this is my question. What were your guys' protocols or routines in between games? Because you got to recover, and this always baffled me. Like, how do you guys do it? Obviously, you just mentioned you got to have a extremely high fitness level to compete at that level to manage those loads. But was there anything in particular that you guys did in between games nutrition wise? I don't know, little naps or anything like that helped you to recover and do your best to get to that optimal state in the next game?
Yeah, so we spend a lot of time trying to understand this, because we normally would have, so we'd arrive at the stadium probably 3.5 hours before, 3 hours beforehand. Before the 3 hours before the first game, we would have probably done an activation, a blowout, some sort of movement to try and get ourselves obviously mobile and warm. Once we get to the stadium, I'd like to do a stadium walk, just go around and see the pitch and just not feel as though I haven't been there before. So be out on the pitch, what does the grass look like, what's the wind, kind of those kind of small little features. But then the time before that, we then meet as a team probably an hour before the game, so 50 to 60 minutes before the game. We then get kind of told the team, who's playing. We then go through our kind of attack and defense principles, what we're going to try and use, where are their weaknesses, where are their attack, defense weaknesses, etc. What can we target? And then you then probably have 10, 15 minutes of strapping, getting changed. Warm up then is we go out for a warm up together, 20 minutes. And then you come back and there's probably about 7 minutes left. That's when you start getting excited for the game. Shirts come up, we change our shirts, we put our match shirts on, and then we're into the game. Once we finish the game, we come off. There's any media opportunities, but we have probably 2.5 hours to 3 hours between games. Within that, it's cooling down, taking the temperature out of your body, showers, ice baths. It's a quick debrief from the coach. We then have some food, or a small bit of food, bit of nutrition, whatever guides the stomach. But that's when you then start kind of debriefing the last game. Individuals as team members, you then start previewing the next game. So it's a quick crossover, and then I probably try and go for a little nap for 20, 30 minutes if I'm not too caffeined up, and then it then just repeats itself. So it's quite a undulating emotional journey, and I think that's probably the biggest part of the Sevens weekend. It's keeping your emotions in check, because you have these massive highs of, you said, scoring a last minute try, you're beating Fiji, New Zealand, but you then have to then go back, come back down again, try and conserve some energy, refuel, prepare again to then go out and play another big game. So again, a semi-final, and then you have this massive spike again, and then it's about controlling your emotions. It's about trying to conserve energy when you can. And that's why you torture yourself before a tournament, so that you are in that best physical state. And yeah, the game is definitely evolving from being just about the physical elements. The psychology, the mental part of sport as a whole is evolving. And that's something which I did feel paid dividends when I was coming to the latter years of my career.
Oh, thanks for sharing that. Ben, I can imagine you got a few follow-up questions.
Yeah, so many things, because I think one of the things we talk about, G, is that a lot of young players, especially that we speak to, they seem to think that it's just a physical game, and they've got good S&C programs, and they prioritize the gym and things like that. But as Dan has just sort of explained, the mental aspect of what you've had to do to be consistent has been so integral. Dan, was that something that you realized at the start, or was that something that you developed, and just like to be able to go in between those emotional, as you say, the undulating emotional roller coaster, managing that? Did you get better and better at that, or was it always something that you actually needed that fear almost to drive you as well?
Yeah, no, I don't think I think that was probably when I look back at my career, the mental part was probably the bit which I didn't get right. And I think that's again, you're super critical as athletes, wanted to always do better. Sometimes things aren't always, you're not always happy with the outcome of things or your actions. And even if you did scored 3 tries, you then pick up the one missed tackle or the drop pass you had. So it's really hard to always be happy with those moments. And I think for myself, the fear did drive me to be better, and that was a big part of actually how I actually got the best out of myself. But I do think that I didn't get the mental side of the game right when I needed to. There was a lot of times where, like Ben would always say, you want to try and become the go-to person in those big moments. Like, what do you need to be doing before the game? What do you need to be doing in the game to be that go-to person? And I don't always think I put myself in that position. And that's probably more my mental stuff more than anything else. And even though we spend a lot of time trying to understand how we can be 100% all the time, it's not realistic, and you're not always 100% all the time. And I think that's something as sport as a whole, while the pictures being painted that it looked amazing from the outset, and Sevens is incredible and sports amazing because it's the top of anything that can be done. It's not always a enjoyable space. It's not always an enjoyable time, and it can also be quite a real frustrating, depressing place to be. So like sports amazing. There's some incredible accolades, there's incredible highs, but the lows are also quite low as well. And sometimes the lows are what drive you to be the best version of yourself. But it's worth just mentioning, like, look, while everybody wants to be the next Anthony Watson or, Will Jordan, etc., there's still a lot of the downs are also a big part of sport as well. The same as in life as well. So
yeah.
Probably didn't answer your question at all there, but I think it's I just wanted to try and explain, like, it does. Again, I think we've all in our own personal careers had those lows. Like, it's not just about, there's also the highs everybody sees on Instagram and sees on social media, and life looks pretty perfect for a lot of these players, but there's still so many other bits which you don't see or know about as well.
Yeah, it's fascinating because people, and especially the young players, as I just mentioned with G, that we speak to, and young players that we coach, they see the stadium lights, they see the tries being scored, they don't necessarily understand what constitutes that and how to get that, and they think they see these amazing glory moments, and they think that's what it entails. But it was really interesting hearing you outline like a typical weekend and the ups and downs and the emotional highs and lows and how you manage that. It's really so when it will be surprising to people to hear you say that you didn't manage it very well. What would you have done differently then? Because you're obviously the all-time leading try scorer in Sevens rugby. So if you didn't manage it very well, what could it have looked like? What would you have done differently? When you say that, are you just being, like, as you saying, ultra critical because that's the nature of the competitor? What would you have done differently?
I think it's definitely there's definitely the bits where you are super critical. I think there's probably a number of opportunities where I think I missed out on. But again, I think it is the super critical part, because there's probably parts where I shouldn't have scored, or there's involvements I shouldn't have had which went really well. There's involvements I had that shouldn't have gone well, which did go well, and the bits where I should have done better, I didn't do better. So that it probably, over the 14 years, probably does balance out to a degree. But I think the big moments which we missed out on, I probably didn't perform to my best ability at that time. And it's probably easy to sit back now and watch it back on tape. The same as any coach, they can sit there and say, "Why didn't you do this?" It's very easy with a laptop to stop and say, "Why doesn't this happen?" And there's not the context of the game, like how I was feeling in myself from a physical perspective, how fit I was feeling, that kind of whole part. So yeah, the mind is a very complex beast, and it can be your friend. It can also drag you down as well. So I think, probably put into perspective, it evened out over time. From some of the involvements, I probably got more right than I did wrong. But I just think you want to try, and you look back in your career, you're 20% better now than you were when you were playing. So you always feel you were better when you were playing. But I do think there are some big moments which I probably missed out on, which I could have potentially contributed more to in that one moment or that one instance, which I think maybe I could have probably done this earlier or better. So but we'll never know.
A follow-up question, I guess I'd love to know then, is when do you feel you played your best sevens? Because I think when I speak to, I certainly think this myself, when I was playing, your sort of level of IP, if you like, improves, your understanding, your ability to manage your processes, your training load, your training week, you get to know your body. So that improves, but then maybe you haven't got the physical capabilities, and there's other variables, obviously, like teammates and cohesion and things like that. When do you feel you played your best rugby, and was it correlated to the people you were around as well at the time?
I think my best period, probably that 2015 to 2018-19 period. Kind of so into the year before the Olympics, into the Olympics, and kind of those 2 years after that. That's down to probably players we had in the team. We had a real settled squad. We had the squad then probably had been playing together for 2 or 3 years. So we'd come into a position now where we were really coming into really nice place. Sevens after the Olympics, a lot of players retired as well. So the standard probably dropped slightly, as is natural in any life cycle of an Olympic cycle. You generally have the peaks into the games. Then the kind of year or two after, players start retiring and they realize they can't get to the next Olympics, or other opportunities start opening up. So I think the game probably peaked in 2016 and it kind of evolved from there. But I do think my training's going really well. I was really feeling fit, strong and fast. I was really able to understand my body, how I get to get the best out of it. So I think that was the part of it. So yeah, it was the coaching staff around us. They enabled us to be the best version of ourselves. They supported us in the kind of our own personal growth from a strength and physical perspective and from a mental side as well. We, the team, knew each other a lot better and really well. There's probably less changes of players coming in and out of the squad. So again, we could really build this cohesion throughout as well. So yeah, they were probably the golden years, and then COVID hit and ruined everything.
Then yeah, I can definitely relate. COVID changed a lot of things for a lot of us, and in the rugby world, that was a tough time. I remember as a coach, going to the stadium, no people there. That was hard. But I can imagine you've had a few crazy moments, some tough moments in your career where it took a lot of resilience to get through. Is there anything in particular that stands out where there was a period in your career it was extremely hard and you felt like this is a crazy mental battle? I'm not sure how you're going to overcome it.
I don't think there's like a standout. Like I was very lucky that with injury, I avoided contact like the plague. So that kind of held me in good stead to not get too injured. I was quite robust in that regard as well. So I could deal with the training load. So I didn't have any real like hamstring or soft tissue issues. I think for me, like the resilience was just being at my best for each game and each tournament. It's very hard to put together a tournament weekend. You've got 6 games in a weekend. Like I said, it's the very undulating up and down emotion to get through a weekend. So that's one part. It's then stitching together 2 tournaments. It's then getting like the 3, 4, 5 tournaments. So to be consistent for the year was always very hard. I would always have kind of peaks and troughs of blocks of tournaments or areas. So I think the resilience was more around actually just sticking at it, working hard even when it didn't feel as though we could or wanted to work hard, and just grinding it out. So there was probably resilience at the start of my career around not getting selected for things, but I probably didn't have enough of an understanding of the knock-on effect of this to then really feel it in my latter years of my career. So I think the only real resilience was probably after COVID and then coming back as GB Rugby in 2021 after being made redundant by the RFU and then having to spend 6 months preparing to go into the Olympics. It was more a case of we spent a lot of time speaking about how terrible the last 6 months have been by being made redundant, the program having to change locations, funding dropping out, not really knowing what could happen with the Olympics, with COVID, etc. So that was quite a tough period of also knowing that potentially these are my last year or two of playing rugby. What's next? So yeah, it very much became quite a tough period. But for me, it was just like the goal is to go to the Olympics in June. We're now in January time. Like all efforts have been pushed to that. Everything we're doing on the pitch away from it is to make sure that we're in the best version of ourselves there. And yeah, that was probably the most frustrating period of my career, to be fair. That kind of period of post kind of March 2020 through to the end of the Olympics.
So that time when if you can give a bit more insight when you became redundant, and take us through what did that actually mean? Like obviously you guys were contracted by the RFU. Was it the funding cut in terms of the preparation for the next Olympics? How did that impact you guys, not just emotionally, but what was the financial impacts on that? Because I think a lot of people don't realize, what people go through in order to prepare for a World Cup, but especially something as massive like that, if you can maybe just explain a bit more.
Yeah, so first Olympics, obviously 2016 went really well, lost in the final to Fiji, so got a silver medal for that, which was an incredible experience. Then I was 28 at the time, so then into the next kind of cycle. I didn't know whether or not I'd be staying around, but got contracted through to the next cycle, which should have been 2020. Obviously from there, 2020 in March, obviously COVID hit. So the UK, everything had lockdown, not really knowing the length of obviously when we would be back in the team. So kind of 2020 March, we got told, look, go home from training, same with everybody else, go home from training, take some stuff, train at home. Obviously we'll hopefully be back in a few weeks. And then from there, we can then start preparing for the Olympics. As England, obviously then would then go into a GB kind of selection pool of players for 12 weeks, then go into get selected for the Olympics. That then obviously got put on pause. The Olympics got postponed until the year after. So within that period, we didn't go back into camp from March until whenever. That was the last time we were in camp. Got made redundant as our contracts finished in August 2020. And then we were out in the wilderness. Didn't have any redundancy pay. And then from there, kind of had to then find the next opportunity. So some guys retired. Some guys went to university, etc. So yeah, that was really tough. Not really knowing what was next. Kind of knowing that potentially there's Olympics in 2021, but not knowing what it even looks like from a program perspective. I went to London Irish for 2 weeks, tick a box there, and then did some other stuff. And then eventually we realized that we would get some downgraded contracts to then spend 6 months doing sevens from January onwards. Went back in January 2021 to prepare for the Olympics in Tokyo in July 2021. So that was kind of the part of having meetings from March until August around actually what the program could look like the following year for England. And then eventually them saying probably May time, actually, there's going to be no program next year. We're making it really redundant. So you've gone from being told potentially there is something next year, but we don't know what it is yet for 2 or 3 months, then being told actually there's nothing next year. And when your contract's finished, then you are out of contract. So yeah, that was quite a tough one to swallow from the RFU, not knowing kind of where anyone's careers from a sevens perspective was going to go, but then also our livelihood as well. So actually providing for our families was obviously pretty tough. And rugby wasn't being played as it was beforehand, so not really knowing where any opportunities or work-wise and just kind of being thrown out in the cold, really.
Yeah, I think we've all had our battles in that. I can relate to that as well, because I was a consultant in the corporate space and doing consultancy work for the scrums, and same, boom, no income. I had to figure that out. Yeah. I want to transition quickly. We spoke a lot about your career, and there's still many questions. I know Ben can still come back to quite a few of them. But what interests me now, you've been retired since 2022, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
What have you been up to? Because apparently, you're still jetting up and about to Dubai. You're giving sevens masterclasses there in Dubai to everybody over there. What have you been up to?
Yeah, so I retired in 2022. I retired after the Olympics. Well, stopped playing after the Olympics in 2021. Thought my time was up. Realized that actually my body still felt quite good. So I came back for 2 tournaments in 2022, but the program was not the same as what beforehand. Beforehand, we were training full-time, all based in London, training Monday to Friday, full-time program with coaches, players and everything else in-house. Whereas the program after the Olympics became kind of more of a camp-based program. So we'd go and spend a few days training in Loughborough. There's players who were, in theory, we were all freelance players in a way, where we'd go up and train somewhere, we'd then go home and train back where we lived. So it was nowhere near the same. So the opportunity for an older player to get the same treatment, to get the same care wasn't the same. So I didn't want to get a new contract, realized actually it's probably time to try and find a new career. Within that, I went and had an opportunity to coach with China men's sevens team. So that came into effect from kind of February time 2022. In that kind of in between time, I went back and played and kind of had a swan song for 2 tournaments in Singapore and Vancouver. So really weird and wonderful mix, but an opportunity to kind of say goodbye to the sport and say thank you. So did that, played okay. I was okay. I'm sure you'll ask some of my mates and they'll say I was terrible, but I scored a few tries, nothing too amazing. The squad were okay. And then from there, I went and coached China men's sevens teams. A really nice foray into kind of into coaching a growing nation. a developing nation from a rugby sense. So we did that from March until December. Realized it wasn't going to work being in China, going back and forth. So that opportunity then stopped. Within that time, I then started working with Simon Amor at Japan Sevens team. So helping their kind of Sevens program with Simon, so supporting there. And then realized that coaching wasn't for me and was looking at other opportunities within sport. So again, sport was a big part of my life, but was looking more on marketing side. So joined a marketing agency in Dubai. Again, sports growing there. There's a lot of money being spent from Saudi. There's a lot of money being spent on sport as a whole there. So realized that over the next few years that would be an opportunity rather than being in the UK. Went out to Dubai, and I've been there now for 2 years. So a really weird and wonderful way. But I think you definitely have to go through the motions of working out what's next. It's not a simple equation. Like a lot of people, even when you do retire from playing sport, there's going to be the hangover of what I was in theory and where I'm going. And it's very hard to drop that kind of, not mask, but it's very hard to change that kind of feel of what I was and the perception that people had of you. But also the simple things like the goal setting parts, like you're in a team environment playing sport, professional sport, you all have one combined goal. That's very different when you're in a corporate environment, depending on what team you're in. So those changes were one part, but then your identity also changes as well. And that was a big part, which is just taking a lot of time. What you were known for, it's very different to then what you're doing next. And sitting down in an office with Jan talking about, tea and coffee and stuff compared to actually talking about other things is quite a big change. So yeah, I think the transition takes a lot of time, and I don't think you're ever ready for it, regardless if it's an injury or if you're told to leave. So it's just something in which you have to take the walk through, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort, and it's quite a tough place at times.
Dan, the transition generally, I mean, I know it must be a bit strange for you, but we talk about identity and people hold on to that identity. Is that something you've struggled with as well? I know I've been with you in Dubai maybe a year ago or so, and people you get recognized there probably more than you would in other parts of the world, because you played a lot in the Dubai Sevens. Is that quite hard to deal with? Not the people coming up and say, can I have a photo or something, but it's just 1 minute you're just like this new guy trying to forge a new career, and then suddenly you're back to who you were. Do you struggle personally with that identity thing?
Thankfully it doesn't happen too much, but no, I think it's part and parcel of the journey. So it's a nice refresher to remind you actually you did something really cool, for a number of years. So that's one part of it. But I think that the whole thing around the identity is that it's not a case where you stop becoming what you were. Like you weren't a person beforehand, and therefore now you stop playing, you are now someone brand new. You have a lot of experiences in life and life opportunities and memories which you kind of hold on to because they were obviously really cool and really, really exciting and very unique. I think for people, they see those kind of memories and those opportunities. So again, the Dubai Sevens playing there, they see those things. So it's really nice to obviously be remembered for those things. But I'm also sport's quite a cool thing. It brings in a lot of different people, same as the Olympics. So when we was playing in the Olympics 2016 and 2021, people in the street would be like, oh, that's really cool, we saw you playing. So sport as a whole goes so much further than just playing sport, down in Twickenham or whatever else. So this is kind of where it's a combined shared understanding that sport's really cool. So it does take time from an identity perspective to change and be like, I was a rugby player and now I'm sat in an office, but it's just something which is part and parcel of the evolution of us as of people as well as we change from jobs to jobs.
Yeah, sure. You touched on it earlier, how the situation changed, with COVID, with Team GB and with the camps when you came back. I'd love to know where you feel Sevens should sit generally, but also in the United Kingdom. And are we missing a trick with where it's placed? Because when I reflect back on, I remember being in the environment when we're playing against New Zealand and they had Ardi Surveyor, they had, all these guys, Wasaki Naholo, Charles Piertow, Frank Halai, and they used it as a developmental tool. And the same with South Africa. They used it as a developmental tool. Do you think, are you frustrated when you reflect back on and what the RFU did with in terms of the funding, but also in terms of what are they missing a trick with it?
Yeah, 100%. I do think there is an opportunity there. It's very different now from where it was. It's now, again, from when we were in a full-time program to then going into a camp-based program to where it is now. It's no more. So guys now will turn up a few days before a tournament and then fly out. So there's no training together. So it's frustrating massively that we spend a lot of time trying to be the best versions of ourselves, to be the best sevens team in the world, to then where it is today. And while it probably does sit with the RFU, it's probably sevens as a whole around the world. It's it's a massive financial burden for the RFU, which I understand, but I still think that it could have been integrated and it can be integrated a lot better than it is currently being used now. As you mentioned, a lot of those guys, even from the South African players, Quagga Smith and Jason Colbin, these guys played sevens. And I think I'm obviously biased. I played sevens and I played a bit of 15s, and people see sevens as, oh, it's just all the slight guys playing rugby. But you see parts of the game in 15s where, like in sevens, you have to be good at, well, I probably wasn't, but at the same time, you have to be good at tackling. You have to have good rucking skills. You have to have good aerial skills. You have to be able to read the game really well. You have to attack and defend. It's not just being a one skill or one element. You have to have a rounded skills, and that's what sevens gives you. But it also means that you understand how to play in space. And I think when you watch 15s, sometimes when there is the spaces and opportunities with the kind of 3-on-2s, 2-on-2s, which they eventually create, they're not always they're not always achieved. They don't always score those opportunities because they don't always get manipulated in space as well. And I don't know if that's just, again, I'm not a sevens or a rugby connoisseur in that sense, but I still think that sevens gives you those skills of actually how do you really unlock those small opportunities, those small windows. And some of the best players in the world have played sevens beforehand. But again, what do I know about rugby?
Dan, you mentioned earlier you guys traveled quite a bit, a lot of tournaments. You traveled all. Is there any place that stands out? We really enjoyed visiting. I know you guys gone to Las Vegas, Dubai, all over the world. Is there any one country or one tournament in particular? We are not talking about the rugby side of things, but just visiting the place and getting to experience it.
We were very lucky, as you mentioned, playing sevens around the world. And I think that was probably the allure of actually being able to play the sport for so long. We'd go to some incredible places. For me, it was Cape Town. Cape Town was up there with one of the best tournaments. The people, the stadium, the environment, it was hostile at times when you play in South Africa. It was an incredible place to play. But then the stuff off field was awesome as well. Like being able to actually sample some of the food, some of the drink there, it was incredible. And it was just a real nice balance of on and off field. Vancouver also was really cool as a place to explore. You're playing in kind of the start of the winter there, but you're playing in an indoor stadium, the crowd there is amazing, like an indoor stadium with the roof closed. So the sound there was incredible. So there's so many different opportunities around the world to play in some amazing countries, play against some of the best teams in the world, but they're probably the standout tournaments. For me, they were always, and I also had good memories that we won both those tournaments as well. So a bit biased.
Ben mentioned some of the players that came from sevens going to 15s, and we see now in the Springbok team, who's on the stick as well. He's now got and he shared one of his experience back in the day playing sevens. One of the biggest moments for him was buying his first laptop. And he didn't know how to use it. He actually just bought it to listen to music, which was quite interesting. Is there anything from your tours, as a player, sevens player, and being professional, something that you bought that you were really proud of buying back then?
Yeah, I think when I first started, I also brought myself a laptop as well. So like a proper old Dell from America, it was a bit cheaper from Best Buy. So yeah, they were the kind of things you do find some incredible things. But there's nothing really of note or probably worth explaining at the moment. But no, I think we're very lucky with sevens. Again, we go around the world, we play in some incredible culture, we play in some incredible countries, we delve into some amazing cultures. For me, probably thinking back now, I was lucky enough to be inducted into the Coral Sevens. I went there and I was an ambassador there. I was inducted into their kind of Walk of Fame, and going around Fiji and seeing the scale of which Sevens has gripped on the country is mind-boggling. Like, I was going around and people wanted pictures with babies of me. I was doing, there's lined of people I was having to take pictures with. But I think as a country, and you can see why they are one of the best teams in the world, because Sevens is literally their bread and butter, the same as what football would be here in the UK. Like, Sevens there is up there with it's the biggest sport there, and it's incredible to see, but also how kind the people are, how they're welcoming, and how beautiful the country is as well. So yeah, that was an amazing opportunity. And again, I wouldn't have got that if it wasn't for playing Sevens. So yeah, while they did try and kill me at every opportunity on the field, they were also quite hospitable and quite nice off the field as well at times. So yeah, Fiji is up there with one of the best places I've ever been to in the world also.
No, thanks for sharing. I know Ben's got a few questions. Before I hand it over to Ben, I just got one last question. You know, as a coach and a forward, I would have loved to have you in my team. You know, I just can see that counter attack abilities and scoring tries from your own try line. I could imagine that for you. You remind me of a player back in the day, because you're quite a tall guy, Peter Rousseau, ages back. He used to score these crazy tries. People never knew what he was going to do. Even the coaches, Alan Zondag, mentioned that in the pod recently. But I can imagine you probably had quite a few offers to go back into 15s with what you were doing in sevens. Why not make that transition? Were you just fully committed to seven? Was that like something that you really enjoyed, which you felt, this is what I need to do? I'm creating a legacy over here. Is there any reason why you never transitioned into 15s?
Yeah, I think it's probably one of my regrets, in the sense that I don't think I got the best out of myself playing 15s. I look back and I think from how I felt playing sevens, I never felt that playing 15s. Again, I was at Gloucester in the academy there with some really good guys. And then I went across to Bristol as well, and it never really clicked. I started off the first season playing really well, top try scorer for 8 months of the year or 6 months of the year, but never really materialized into that next kind of level. So I think that was always my frustration, that I played in England in the 20s as well. And a lot of those players I played with played for England or did really well in the Premiership. And I obviously saw myself at that stage being like, cool, I have an opportunity here. But I never really made it work. So I think that's one of my main regrets, of not really making 15s work as well as it should have for my skill set that I had. But I don't think I had the skills at the time of that age to really unlock how I should be playing the game. So where sevens enabled me to be the best version of myself at that time, I could never make it work at 15s. But I also, for me, I was very happy playing sevens because I knew that I was going to some incredible locations around the world. We were playing in some incredible environments against some of the best sevens players in the world. So I would have also be going back to playing to be a rotation player if I was playing at all, or having to prove myself again at 23, 24, 25. And I knew that the Olympics was on the horizon in a few years. We were playing in Commonwealth Games, we were playing in Rugby World Cups. There was a lot of excitement around the game of sevens at that time. So I didn't want to then jeopardize what I was already creating and what I was already involved in, to then have a reset at 23, 24, not knowing whether or not that would actually ever work. So there were a few opportunities, but they were far and far between. And sevens for me, again, my build, my opportunities enabled me to be, a better sevens player than I was a 15s player. And again, that's one of my frustrations probably growing up. I never really unlocked the opportunity and spent enough time talking to the coaches to really understand how I can be that better version.
When you say that, like growing up, did you want to play 15s? Was that the goal?
There wasn't any sevens growing up, so I played sevens when I was second year of college. So played with Henry Trinder, played with a few guys when we were at Hartbury, and then we lost in the Middlesex, the Rotting Park sevens, like quarterfinals, like John Brake and like a real strong Millfield team. So there's like my first opportunities playing sevens. So again, the goal is when I was young was always to play 15s, and from Gloucester, watching Gloucester on TV, going across to Gloucester and Kingsholm to watch them there, you always wanted to be involved in that. So going to Hartbury College, which was linked to Gloucester to a degree, meant that I had this opportunity, and it was just playing rugby. There was no real I want to be this person when I'm older. I didn't have that growing up. I just wanted to play rugby or play sport and exercise. So that was probably a big part of my journey, to be fair.
If you'd been in New Zealand or South Africa, do you think you would have played Test rugby?
Wow, it's a big question. I don't know. I think the style of play potentially would have suited me more. Probably less South Africa. They want to maul everything and things like that. But I definitely think a faster paced game suited me, and I would always do real well in pre-season or those earlier games in the season because the ball's being played at a faster pace. So I can get my hands on the ball. I can be more of a threat when it then slowed down, and I'm then chasing box kicks. Like I'd rather go and play sevens than chase box kicks. And sevens probably gave me more of an opportunity to be perceived as a good 15s player because I was getting my hands on the ball more. But then at the same time, when I'm playing 15s, I would touch the ball maybe once a game, or I'm spending, I'm chasing 8 box kicks. Like I'm not really utilizing my super strengths in those moments. And while it's part and parcel of playing 15s, and I really enjoyed doing that when I was at Bristol, I never really found my groove in that respect as well. Would I have done differently if I was somewhere else? I don't know. We'll never know.
Yeah, well, I guess, that's partly why I asked, because I'm thinking, with that pathway in New Zealand with those guys, especially when in Gordon Titchens' era, all of those guys came through and they played sevens first, and then they appreciated the pathway, and then but also just, I know in South Africa and New Zealand, especially those two countries, they'd utilize and appreciate someone's skill set. And it sounds like G and I talk often about, to young players especially, and to coaches, to help people understand what your strengths are and then amplify your strengths, which is when we talk and we hear you talk, it sounds like that's what you did with your sevens career and your journey. You were able to work out what your strengths were, work out why you were different, and then amplify them and really bring them to the fore consistently, which is really impressive. Who is your sort of favorite opponent, or like from an individual point of view? And is there any specific person, both either as a tough opponent, but someone you really respected?
There was a number of wingers playing sevens at the time. So Siabele Sinala was obviously a massive challenge. He was tearing up the game. Came in 18 and scored ridiculous amounts of tries, and left and went to 15s. I think the long-standing, not rivalry, but the long-standing competition was always against Perry Baker or Carlin Isles, again for America. They were the fastest players on the series. Again, you'd go into a game knowing that if you're not 100%, they're going to run around you like you're not there. So they were always a real good competition, but it was also one of actually trying to pin the mask on it being, you wanted to be the best player in that position. So if you want to play against the best players, New Zealand obviously had a number of good players as well, but I think I spent a lot of time watching Siabele. I spent a lot of time watching Perry and those guys, and just working out how I can nullify them and how I can also be better against them as well, and to challenge them and scare them. So yeah, while they are a few names, like again, my whole mentality and task was to go out there and try and beat people and scare them and put fear into them in that regards, and not let them touch me as well.
Dan, we're running out of time, so I've got 2 last questions, and then we'll have to let you go. I'd love to know which of your teammates was the best, not just tourist, but the person that made the time fly by, made it easy during the week, made it easy during those highs and lows, helped you grow as an individual, helped you grow as a teammate. Which of those, was there a specific person that made it, or a specific coach, or is there a specific standout in your helping you on that journey?
I played with a lot of good guys. Again, none of them probably that. From what you've asked, none of them are on that level. I would never give them that kind of that label at all. But no, I think the standout for me was less because he's an amazing player, but he was a good player. Was probably Tom Mitchell. So he was obviously a very good player. I'm obviously trying to do him down there, but he was obviously a very good player on the field. He was a really good captain as well, and he enabled everybody else within the team as well, and that was powerful in the sense that he got every individual player, so he understood what made them tick, how to get the best out of them. But he also led by example when he played and he was the person you kind of wanted at the back. You know, I guess questionable, he did miss a few tackles, which I like pulling him up on. But at the same time, his ability to be there in those moments, he's the person you wanted the most at, you know, a halfback. And again, I played with some amazing players in that position. It's less about the position he played. It's more his influence on the team. It's more how he controlled the environment. It's more how he cultivated a really powerful environment that we could all be a part of and grow in. And yeah, he was also sometimes good crack as well, away from the field as well sometimes.
Awesome. G, did you have any final questions before I ask our final question?
No, I just want to say it was brilliant listening to you, Dan. You know, I think for all the young rugby players coming through, not just sevens but also 15, there's so many great nuggets there. And no, it was just I could just keep on listening because it's really insightful for me as a 15s player, or maybe not a 15s player, forward. It was really inciting, like I say, insightful listening to you and your processes, your philosophy. So, you know, I just want to say thanks for taking the time, for sharing in your busy schedule and sharing your journey with us. I really enjoyed it. But yeah, Ben, over to you for your last question.
Cheers, G. Nort, I guess the last one is, we would love to know, if you could do it all again, was there anything that you would do differently? And if so, what?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it would have been the start of my career, giving it more a crack at 15s. So having those awkward conversations with coaches, understanding where I was at from the academy perspective, and understanding why I wasn't playing or what I could be doing better. And then the same my first few years at Bristol, like what am I doing well? What can I be doing better? And I think it's, on one part, it's asking, but it's also trying to understand how you can instill more confidence in the coaches that you are the right player for the job as well. So they're probably the parts I would probably try and do again. Sevens wise, I was quite content with what I had and what I accomplished. I would like to have had more consistency at times, but definitely if my start of my career was different, then I would potentially have more opportunities, you know, and more options kind of moving through my career. But yeah, look, I think once you get to a stage where you retire, again, you get better with age, which is always a good thing. Highlights stay around, less low lights. But you also are more aware of actually the journey. You spend more time reflecting, don't you? So that's some of the blessing, but also the curse. But no, I'm very fortunate that I spent 14 years doing something really cool. Played with some amazing people, played with some really cool teams. Yeah, I've got an Olympian medal to share to my kids and family and friends as well. So that's pretty cool too.
Dan, amazing. Thanks for your time today. It's been really good having you with us, and thanks for sharing so much. Your journey and your experiences and your insights. It's been really, really good.
No, thank you for having me. Again, loving the podcast as well. So again, thank you for having me on the podcast.
Thanks.
It's a pleasure. We really enjoyed it. Thanks for joining us. And is there maybe anything you would like to say to someone on the pod, the family members, friends, any message in particular like to share before we sign off?
No, they're all right. They'll get a message off me if they need anything. So for now, it's just enjoying the last few days here in the rain before I go back to Dubai. So no, it's all good.
All right.
Cheers,
We'd just like to thank our audience for listening and watching our podcast episode with Dan. We really appreciate him joining us. And guys, to help us to continue to grow the show, please like, follow, and subscribe. And also, Ben and myself, we've got our unbelievable communities on school. So if you want to check out those communities, just send us a DM on Instagram with the word school or community, and we will pop over the link to you. All right, guys, it's been unbelievable. Thanks for everything, Ben, Dan. Have an unbelievable day.
Thank you, guys.
Cheers,
guys. Bye.